So what have we got for you today? Well, the Mirror has splashed on a shocking photograph of what is thought to be an American XL bully type dog chasing a man down the street, having already attacked and bitten a young girl. Now, 3 people were hurt in this incident in Bordesley Green in Birmingham at the weekend. And now, finally, the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, has said, we can't go on like this. Jason, is she finally right about something?
Yeah, in the same way, eventually, because if you have enough monkeys, you can get Shakespeare typing. This is. I mean, the problem here, Susie, is multifold. But Ramirez has been campaigning on this for several years now. We realised there was a problem because the number of people being attacked by dogs is rising year on year. The number of people being killed, particularly young children, has been kind of 18 in the last 24 months, if not more. I can't remember the exact figure off the top of my head. Has been rising as well. And what was kind of angering us so much at the Mirror was these deaths, these maulings, these attacks were taking place in areas which, if they'd happened in Surrey and it had been a picturesque and cute-looking white girl from a privileged background who'd been killed, they would have acted by now. But they were taking place on estates in South Wales, in Merseyside, and elsewhere, and the Tories just didn't seem to care. And we were going, why? What's why? This is a serious problem. It's children were dying and getting, and if they didn't die, they were getting kind of life-changing injuries and scars. Really horrific pictures I've seen in the newspaper conference, which we can't print because they're so horrible to look at, of the victims of dog attacks. And we kept on saying again and again, look, why aren't you going to do anything about this? Because it's something has to be done. You can't just allow innocent children to be killed, mauled, and disfigured like this. Nothing, silence. And finally, there's a video which appears in Bordesley Green in Birmingham of this possibly XL type bully. We'll come on to the problem of breeds in a minute. And the Home Secretary has woken up to it. But here's the thing, it's actually not the Home Secretary's responsibility. It's part of the environment's responsibility, which has oversight of, and we haven't heard anything from them yet. So let's see.
And for those of you listening on podcast, we're just having a watch of this video that's come out. And we sort of start with gosh, crikey, no wonder that's pixelated. We sort of start with in a crowded sort of area of market stalls, someone being pinned to the ground. That was the young girl who was 12 years old by this dog. Now, apparently she'd been running down the street, as children are wont to do, and the dog's sort of natural instincts perhaps had kicked in a bit and it wasn't under the right kind of control. It launched itself at her and it seemed to have pinned her to the ground. Then people started intervening and someone lay on top of the dog as it was mauling her. That knocked it off and it enabled her, we saw very briefly there, for her to get up and run away. She ran screaming into a shop and got some help. Now, of course, the dog then turned its attentions to the people that had intervened. And one young man has sprinted down the road, round the corner, across another road and into a garage forecourt. And the dog has pursued it the whole way. And then he stood by the petrol pumps. And although it's pixelated, it's quite clear the dog has launched himself at this young man and is savaging him as much as it possibly can. Other people then get involved. Someone turns up with an iron bar, doesn't know quite what to do with it, but obviously, is waving it around. And eventually the video comes to an end. I mean, the whole thing is really, really shocking if you sit and watch that through. And the thought of what it's actually like without the pixels, the pixelation is sort of horrifying. But, Suella Braverman has finally said, we're going to do something about it. But the trouble is, Suella Braverman just backing a Mirror campaign is probably worth a front page in itself. But the trouble is that just last month, the government announced it had zero plans to ban these dogs or to change the law. Now, get into the questions, everybody, and tell us what you think about this. Last month, in the House of Lords, the Environment Minister, Lord Benyon, said you need to rely on the Dangerous Dogs Act and existing legislation. And he added, we are working in partnership with the police, local authorities and animal welfare organisations to ensure that the full range of existing dog control powers are effectively applied and encourage responsible dog ownership and reduce the risk of dog attacks. We currently have no plans to add additional breed types to the banned breed list. Now, here we've got a Home Secretary coming out going, we're going to do something about this. And actually, a couple of months previous, there are ministers going, we're going to do something, we've got to do something. It's really serious. But they're saying stuff. And if you search Suella Braverman and dangerous dogs today, Google is full of how she's going to ban them. But the government, when it actually has to write something down, says, no, we're not going to do it. Is this the kind of policy, Jason, the kind that the public would back? But is this like a lot of Suella's sort of announcements? It's lots of talking and not very much doing, maybe?
Well, I'm going to... Mamura's main campaign demand is an overhaul of the Dangerous Dogs Act. We also want tougher penalties on owners and breeders. Breeders is a particular problem. We've got evidence that these are unlicensed breeders, some with links to organized crime, and they are deliberately producing these dogs which are kind of status symbols. That is the easiest bit to crack down on. But the harder bit is actually the kind of what you classify as a dangerous dog. And this is where everything has got snarled up in, because you've got lots of crossbreeds. So you can prescribe XL bullies now, but these are interbred. A lot of these dogs are interbred with other breeds, which are also vicious and nasty. And how you create a law which captures all those crossbreeds is incredibly difficult.
Exactly. And I think most dog owners would probably say, let us know what you think, everybody, because everyone's got an opinion about this. Most dog owners would probably say it's not the breed, usually, that's the issue, because we can all think of Jack Russells that are an absolute monstrosity, and we can all think of, St. Bernards that are as soft as anything. It's the way that dog has been treated that makes it dangerous necessarily. And if it's also, like you say, the kind of people that are breeding these animals, that are selling these animals, that are buying these animals, are the ones who want vicious dogs. And so they're making the breeding process or during the puppyhood or something to make them like this. But then, of course, you combine that with an animal that is bred for size and power and jaw strength and stuff. That's a terrible combination. But you can't really legislate for people to treat their dogs. Well, we do legislate for people to treat their dogs nicely, and it doesn't work, does it? I mean, what could we effectively do about that?
Well, I think the breeding is the first place to start. So you actually bring in some sort of system for licensed breeding. I think it's the only way to do this. Yeah. So when people buy a dog, they know where it's come from. It's come from a reptile. That also actually helps in terms of animal welfare. But the penalties for having an out of control dog, I just don't think are severe enough. I mean, they've got to tighten those up and toughen those up. And then there has to be, this is a difficult bit, and I do get both sides of the argument, Susie, but there is a massive difference between being kind of nipped at by a Chihuahua and being attacked by an XL bully. And however much people argue, and I do get this, it's the owner's responsibility and not the breed of a dog, there is still a difference.
Yeah. There's a sheer quantity of power and weight and force and everything.
Yeah. And I kind of, they need to find a way of framing the law which takes that into account. Because at the moment, these things are out of control, and they are costing people their lives, and they're costing young children their lives. And it can't be beyond the wit of our elected representatives to find a way of framing the law which prevents this from happening.
But what do you think, everybody? Do you think this is only going to be an issue for the government when and if someone in a leafy Surrey street gets savaged? Some breeds are inherently dangerous, says Andy. They are. Yes, they're more dangerous than others, but some of them can be very big and very aggressive breeds. I mean, I can remember a few years ago, like 20 years ago, probably, huge panics about staffies and bull terriers and things like that. And if they are well looked after, they're incredibly loyal family dogs. They've got enormous jaw strength and they need something to chew. But, you know, some of them can be dangerous if they are looked after badly. And we've seen that so many times in our courts as well, when people are coming up for causing a death somehow or another by having a dangerous dog. And that isn't really a crime at the moment, but causing a death in some way. It's because the animal has been horrifically mistreated all the way through. And the Dangerous Dogs Act at the moment is such an appalling bit of legislation, Jason, that it is possible for the police to destroy an animal just for looking a bit like a certain type of banned breed. And like you say, that's just not effective. Even if a dog is perfectly well behaved and they've just seized it because they've arrested the owner for something else, they can destroy an animal that just looks a bit funny. And that's not really justice, never mind not really cricket. So there's got to be some solutions for that, but I don't think they're really bending their mind to it. Have Labour said anything about what they would do if they were in power?
Well, disappointingly, I kind of, you know, we would have liked Labour to actually have kind of, you know, of moved more quickly on this. I thought they might have got the kind of the social consequences angle. So we've had kind of encouraging words, but no more than that from Labour. It's not something they've seized, and we'll keep the pressure up on them on this. I'm slightly disappointed by them, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it, that they perhaps don't want to commit ahead of actually being in government or writing a manifesto, but then how late are you going to leave it, lads? Yeah. At some point, you're going to have to start laying it out and just let the Tories nick some of it, but try and take ownership of it and say it was yours to start with. Now, let us know what you think, everybody. What do you think about the banning of dangerous dogs? What do you think about this horrific attack on that poor girl and those men that intervened to save her? And it really shouldn't be down to members of the public to have to intervene. But then again, it's Bordesley Green in Birmingham. It's not Chelsea, is it?